Part 1. Hitting Bottom. In Chapter 1, Ivor, lost in the abyss's darkness, hears a familiar scream, recognizing it as someone he once knew. Despite his fading memories, he struggles to leave his cave and investigate. He finds the body of Roan, a woman who has fallen into the abyss and is badly injured. Though her body is broken, Ivor is convinced she's still alive. He attempts to comfort her, promising to fix her and return things to how they once were. Roan's broken state seems impossible to repair, but Ivor remains determined, clinging to the hope of restoring her. In Chapter 2, Brin falls into the abyss and, after initially fearing her demise, lands with minimal injury. She is relieved but quickly realizes she is alone. Searching for her friend Roan, she calls out but gets no response. As Brin explores the cold, silent landscape, she begins to feel an unsettling sense of isolation. Her search leads her to a maze of fissures and caves, where she encounters strange, waxy humanoid creatures emerging from cracks. These creatures slowly approach her, filling her with dread as she realizes she is not alone, but surrounded by something terrifying. In Chapter 3, Gifford falls into the abyss, injuring himself but quickly recovering. He searches for his wife Roan, remembering her capture by a flying creature. As he surveys the bleak, frozen landscape, a light moves with him, but he finds no sign of Roan. He hears screams and discovers two bodies, Tressa and Tesh, horribly mangled from their falls. Despite his attempts to comfort them, they are gravely injured and in pain. Gifford struggles with helplessness as he realizes there's no hope of rescue in the abyss, the final resting place for all who fall. Part 2. Seasons shift to winter. In Chapter 1, Persephone and her son Nolan wake to heavy snow in their camp. Nolan, full of energy, wants to see what's happening outside, but Persephone insists he bundle up first. As she prepares him, she reflects on his unique heritage, half rune and half Fhrey, and the challenges he may face. Despite her concerns about his future, especially his shorter lifespan compared to his Fhrey father Nifron, she focuses on giving him a hopeful, innocent childhood. However, her moment of peace is shattered when something unsettling happens outside, shifting the course of their mourning and their lives. In Chapter 2, Persephone, Nolan, and Sicr watch as soldiers flee through the snow, signaling a retreat. As more men emerge from the snowstorm, Nifron confirms it's a full retreat. Nolan greets his father, but Nifron's focus is on the situation. Edgar, panting, arrives with a report. A dragon has attacked the forward encampment, setting the forest ablaze. Only one dragon was spotted, but it was devastating. Persephone sends Nolan away with Sicr to avoid him witnessing the grim news. As she processes the report, the heavy snowfall adds to the sense of impending doom. In Chapter 3, Persephone, Nifron, and Edgar strategize after the dragon attack. Persephone discusses the Gilarabrin's limited range, which prevents Lothian's forces from advancing further for now. Nifron suggests retreating to preserve their advantage and regrouping at a safer location. Edgar is sent back to gather troops and monitor the situation. Persephone, concerned about the fate of Suri, asks Nifron if she is dead, and he confirms it coldly. They discuss the risks of keeping a powerful sword in their tent, which could be stolen by the Fane's forces. Nifron urges caution as the war's tide shifts against them. Part 3. Saving Moya. In Chapter 1, Moya watches as the bridge collapses, taking her friends with it. She feels responsible for their deaths and struggles with the grief. As the armies disperse, Fenelius tells Moya that their efforts were futile and it's over. Moya refuses to accept this and searches for a way to help the fallen. She finds Tection's body, severely injured but alive. With Rain's help, she begins to tend to him. Beatrice reveals that she knew the cost of their journey and explains that the only way to prevent a greater disaster was to let things unfold as they did. Part 4. Losing the Light. In Chapter 1, Gifford, feeling the weight of his failure and the pain from his injuries, wanders the desolate abyss. As he struggles with hopelessness, he hears a voice coming from a cave and investigates. Inside, he finds Ivor the Carver, who is tormenting Roan. Gifford's rage flares as he confronts Ivor, vowing to protect Roan at all costs. He forces Ivor to flee and carries Roan out of the cave, promising to keep her safe. Gifford's determination and love for Roan drive him to defy the despair of the abyss. In Chapter 2, Gifford returns with Roan to find Tesh and Tressa recovering, though still severely injured. As Gifford reassures Roan and reflects on their situation, the group discusses their limited options in the abyss. Gifford vows to protect Roan and keep moving forward, but his light begins to weaken as despair sets in. They realize the cold and pressure they feel may be linked to their mental state. Gifford holds onto hope as a mysterious light appears on the horizon, growing brighter. As they brace for what's coming, Gifford senses it's not just a light, but something, or someone, beyond their understanding. In Chapter 3, Brin finds Tesh badly injured but alive. She reassures him, sharing her escape from dangerous creatures. Tesh, overwhelmed with guilt, expresses his regret for not heeding Wraith's advice and leading his clan to destruction. He apologizes to Brin for failing her, but she reassures him of her love. Despite his guilt and self-doubt, Brin affirms that love is not a logical choice and she still cares for him. Tressa and Gifford watch the exchange, with Gifford noting that Tesh, though broken, is still standing, suggesting hope despite the chaos surrounding them. Part 5. Inconvenient Daughters. In Chapter 1, Imali struggles with the weight of her leadership responsibilities, particularly the decision to ask Moindul to kill his father Lothian. A dragon has been created, escalating the urgency to eliminate Lothian and his supporters. Emily plans to use the Horn of Gillandora as leverage for peace with the runes. Macareta is tasked with persuading Moindul to act, despite his personal connections and doubts. Emily reflects on the emotional cost of her decisions, particularly the betrayal of those she cares about, but resolves that the stakes require such sacrifices for the greater good. Part 6. The Cave. In Chapter 1, Brin and her group, stranded in the abyss, struggle to survive after a brutal fall. Brin reluctantly steps up as leader when the others, exhausted and injured, offer no plans. They find a strange tunnel after seeking shelter, but the group is weak, and Brin must keep them moving. She explores the surroundings alone and discovers the Allison Pillar, proving the climb to escape is possible. However, Brin soon encounters a red, ominous light accompanied by a deep rumbling sound. Realizing the danger, she flees, leaving the group behind to regroup and rest. In Chapter 2, Brin excitedly shares the news that she has found the Allison Pillar, a path to escape the abyss. She believes the climb will be easy, and that the group will regain their strength and hope. However, the others remain doubtful, overwhelmed by their exhaustion and injuries. Tressa, struggling the most, sarcastically questions the climb, and Gifford and Tesh express their inability to even move, let alone climb miles. Brin insists they must try, but the group needs more time to rest before attempting the ascent. Despite their doubts, Brin is determined to lead them out. In Chapter 3, Brin grows frustrated with her companion's lack of progress in the afterlife. While watching a crack in the cave wall, she realizes it may be connected to an earlier memory. Roan joins her, and together they discover objects linked to past events, such as Persephone's lost arrow and torque. Brin is convinced the crack leads to their escape, but Roan disagrees, citing the impracticality of leaving without their physical bodies. After speaking with Tressa, Brin learns that their true mission was never to save Suri, but to retrieve the Horn of Gillandora to fix the world. Part 7. Faith on Trial. In Chapter 1, Malcolm meets with Persephone to discuss the Black Bronze Sword and the ongoing war. Persephone is frustrated with his cryptic responses and demands explanations, but Malcolm insists that trust, not answers, is what's needed. He reveals his deep involvement in the events leading up to their current situation, claiming to have orchestrated key moments in history, including Persephone's marriage and Suri's actions. Malcolm stresses the importance of staying where they are to win the war, despite Persephone's doubts. He leaves her with a single question. Does she trust him? The chapter ends with Persephone unsure of what to believe. In Chapter 2, Persephone arrives at the healing quarter to find Nifron attending to a wounded soldier, Primus Nock, who was found near death outside the camp. Nock reports that goblins attacked their camp near the Nidwalden River, describing large ships with black sails and the horrifying discovery of piles of bones. Despite attempts to cross the river, the goblins destroyed their rafts and continued to terrorize them. Nifron demands more details, but Nock collapses before finishing. Persephone comforts him before following Nifron, who leaves without addressing the soldier's fate, indicating the urgency of the situation. In Chapter 3, Nifron reveals that half of the Second Legion has been lost to goblins, confirming Malcolm's earlier prediction. As they discuss their options, Persephone insists they must stay, despite Nifron's skepticism. He reluctantly agrees, though he remains doubtful, recalling the brutal execution of his father by Lothian. Persephone reflects on Malcolm's accurate predictions, including her son's birth, and believes they must trust him. Nifron warns that if the Phrey's army, accompanied by dragons, appears, they must leave. He acknowledges the risk of staying, but ultimately agrees to hold their ground for now. Part 8. The Past and the Future. In Chapter 1, Roan and Brin study stone tablets, with Roan critiquing Brin's writing system. Roan quickly grasps the language, but challenges Brin's choices, questioning the structure and its inconsistencies. Brin feels self-conscious, realizing that her system, which she considered a personal achievement, is being scrutinized. Despite the criticism, Roan expresses admiration for Brin's creation, which softens Brin's feelings. Roan mentions how the writing is beautiful, and Brin reflects on how Malcolm may have seen her future work. Roan leaves to rest, leaving Brin with the thought that she might have influenced Malcolm's understanding of the language. In Chapter 2, Tesh struggles with the decision to send Brin away for her own survival. He knows that the others are fading in the abyss, and Brin's light is dimming. Despite his feelings for her, he tells her that she must leave, as she's the only one capable of reaching Allison and saving the world. Brin refuses, torn between love and the fear of losing him. Tesh, despite his pain, forces her to accept the truth, knowing that, for everyone's sake, Brin must go. Her departure is inevitable, and Tesh feels the crushing weight of his decision. Part 9. The Climb. In Chapter 1, Tesh and Brin return to the others, revealing that Brin will attempt to escape the abyss. Despite their dire situation, Brin insists they continue searching for a way out. She urges Roan and Tressa to keep trying, while Tesh promises to keep going, but only if Brin agrees to stop hoping for their survival. He asks her to forget them if she manages to escape and find a new life. Brin agrees, and the group makes pledges to keep fighting. Tressa receives forgiveness from Brin, and the chapter ends with Brin preparing for her dangerous journey. In Chapter 2, Brin begins her climb up the column with Gifford, who supports her emotionally but refuses to join her on the dangerous journey. Gifford expresses his loyalty to Roan, revealing his decision to stay behind. Brin confesses her fears of failure and doubts about her abilities, but Gifford reassures her, reminding her of her courage and past sacrifices. As Brin starts her climb, she resolves to succeed for Suri and promises to honor Gifford and the others as heroes in her story. With a final, heartfelt goodbye, Brin begins her journey, determined to fulfill her mission. In Chapter 3, Brin struggles with the exhausting climb, feeling the physical toll of her journey. The cold, weight, and dimming light intensify her fatigue. She reflects on Tesh and the others, realizing the abyss seems to drain her strength. While climbing, she recalls Trilo's love for Muriel and his sacrifice, leading to the realization that to escape, she must let go of the weight she carries, particularly her regret and judgment toward Tesh. She finally forgives him, acknowledging her own imperfections. As she does, her light grows brighter, signaling a shift in her journey. Part 10. Yellow and Rose. In Chapter 1, Suri prepares for a walk, packing bread and cheese into a small pouch. Macareta, working on a sculpture, warns her that going out will upset the old lady, but Suri insists she needs to leave to avoid going stir-crazy. The two exchange playful banter, with Macareta reminding Suri of the collar around her neck, signaling she's not supposed to be out. Despite the tension with the Phrey, Suri is determined to go, saying she can handle herself. Macareta directs her to Arian's house, noting it's empty, and Suri heads out, agreeing to return for a game. In Chapter 2, Suri takes a walk through the plaza, feeling the impending snow, and follows a set of tracks to Arian's house. She enjoys the brief walk, but reflects on how her world has become duller since gaining magic. Upon reaching Arian's home, she enters, finding it musty but carefully maintained. She admires the cheerful decor and imagines the life Arian had before. Suri sits on the bed and recalls the painful memories of their first meeting. She finds a knit hat, a gift from Arian, and for the first time in a long while, she allows herself to cry. In Chapter 3, Suri leaves Arian's home and finds a mysterious figure sitting by a door in the garden. The figure, known as the Ancient One, engages Suri in a conversation about creating the Sentinel, or Dragon, and asks about her experience in the Agave. They discuss the use of memories in creation, and the Ancient One reveals he sacrificed his memories to create a creature. He expresses a strange understanding of the cost of such sacrifices. Suri learns he has been waiting for the door to open for a long time and plans to enter when it does. Part 11. Allison. In Chapter 1, Brin reaches the top of the Pillar of Lost Regret, witnessing the destroyed bridge across the abyss and the absence of the queen, armies, and dragon. She names the pillar and contemplates her isolation. Despite the vast, empty landscape of Nifril, she feels no fear, ready to step into the next phase of her journey. Approaching the shimmering gate to Allison, she is stunned to see a reflection of herself in the mirror-like door, dressed in radiant armor and holding the key. With uncertainty about the nature of her reflection, Brin steps through the door, seeking answers. In Chapter 2, Brin arrives in Allison, overwhelmed by the vibrant beauty and colors she encounters. She reunites with Wraith, who seems younger and happier than before. After a heartfelt embrace, Brin expresses her guilt for leaving everyone behind in the abyss. Wraith reassures her that her journey has always been her destiny. As Brin continues her exploration, she meets Gifford's mother, Arya, who expresses pride in her son's bravery. Brin also meets Wraith's sister, Dedria, a storyteller, and learns about Allison's unique way of allowing loved ones to reunite. The group heads toward the Blue Mountains despite a looming storm. In Chapter 3, Brin continues her journey, feeling both the joy of discovery and the burden of responsibility. At Mari's home, she learns about the Horn of Gilendora, a sacred relic with instructions in her language. Mari reveals Turin's violent past, but also speaks of the trust placed in Brin by Etan, the first king. Despite her doubts, Brin is urged to continue as she carries the key and a fate entwined with Turin's actions. She faces a dark pool, a symbol of the next step in her journey. With faith in herself, Brin moves forward, determined to fulfill her role. Part 12. Venlin. In Chapter 1, Mawandul enters the Arenthenon, now a potential traitor, with Macaretta by his side. Inside, he finds the entire Aquila gathered, with nearly all counselors present. Curator Imali addresses the council, condemning Fane Lothian's rule for its arrogance and destructive actions, including forcing the Miralith to commit atrocities. Imali suggests that Mawandul, as the rightful heir, should kill Lothian to save their people. Vasek, the Master of Secrets, agrees, pushing Mawandul to take action despite the consequences. Imali reveals that Mawandul's grandmother had once considered Grindel as a challenger to the throne, but was denied. The Aquila implore Mawandul to save them. In Chapter 2, Mawandul and Macaretta are alone in the Arenthenon, sharing a quiet moment together. Mawandul struggles with his impending return to the palace and the weight of his planned betrayal. He expresses his feelings for Macaretta, and they share a passionate kiss. As the conversation turns to Macaretta's loss of her soul and the consequences of her actions, the two reflect on the possibility of death and the fleeting nature of their time together. They use their magical powers to create a moment of beauty and light, creating a temporary paradise, and embrace the idea of Venlin, a place of hope and possibility despite the dangers ahead. Part 15. The door opens. In Chapter 1, Brin enters a mysterious pond and finds herself in a dark, disorienting place. She cannot see, feel, or interact with her surroundings as she searches for answers. After hearing growls nearby, Brin realizes she's in a place unlike anything she's known, suspecting she's in the afterlife as a ghost. She struggles to comprehend her new state, noting the absence of light. When she prays for help, glowing mushrooms illuminate the area, revealing the sacred grove. Yet, it's not the vibrant place she expected. Instead, she finds a barren room with a decayed tree, and the growl continues. In Chapter 2, Brin encounters Elan, the grandmother of all, in the sacred grove. Elan explains the tragic history of Turin, her son, who killed his family and challenged his father, Etan, in a fit of madness. Turin, unable to destroy the eternal Etan, sought punishment, but was instead imprisoned. Over time, Turin sought redemption, and after helping Farrell's children, he visited the sacred grove one last time. Elan reveals that Brin is the fourth to enter the sacred place, following Turin, Fenelius, and the Guardian, who may soon assist Brin on her journey. Brin then sees a familiar face, the Guardian herself. In Chapter 3, Brin is joined by Minna, the wise wolf, who helps her leave the sacred grove. Brin, now realizing she's a ghost, feels unafraid as she prepares to leave. She struggles with the door, but discovers that simply possessing the key is enough to open it. After Minna helps, Brin steps outside into a snowy landscape, feeling the warmth of daylight for the first time in ages. She's back in the world, ready to find Suri, guided by the wolf and her newfound resolve. The chapter ends with Brin stepping into the wintry world beyond the door. Part 14. The Last Meal. In Chapter 1, Suri prepares lunch while observing Macaretta's nervousness about an upcoming task. Suri reflects on Macaretta's Miralith upbringing, which left her disconnected from practical tasks. The conversation turns to the topic of death, with Macaretta questioning the consequences of killing and the fate of her soul. Suri shares her own feelings about loss and the difficulty of living after losing loved ones. As evening approaches, Suri and Macaretta prepare for their respective roles in a deadly mission. Suri, uncertain of her own fate, anticipates that crucial events are about to unfold. In Chapter 2, Suri waits outside the Arenthenon for the meeting to begin, reflecting on her upcoming return to the Hawthorn Glen. As she sits, she is unexpectedly reunited with her wolf sister Minna, who has returned from the dead. Overcome with joy, Suri embraces Minna, feeling an overwhelming sense of normalcy. Inside the Arenthenon, chaos erupts as a loud crash and fire follow the Fane's speech. Suri, reminded of her purpose, prepares to deliver a horn to Persephone, knowing that Minna's return signals trouble for the Gulgans. The moment they had planned for has finally arrived. Part 15. Breaking the Law. In Chapter 1, Mawandul prepares to kill his father, Fane Lothian, during a council meeting. As the Fane addresses the assembly, Mawandul's nerves intensify, and doubts arise about whether he can go through with the assassination. Meanwhile, Macaretta, in hiding, launches an attack on Sin, Lothian's bodyguard, causing a massive disruption. The plan goes awry when Sin manages a counterattack before dying, and Mawandul hesitates. As Macaretta is violently killed by the Fane, Mawandul's resolve is tested. Despite his doubts, he ultimately casts a fireweave, preparing to execute his father. In Chapter 2, Mawandul confronts the aftermath of his father's fiery death, realizing that by killing him, he has broken Farrell's law and lost his Fhrey status. Despite this, he declares himself the new Fane, demanding the horn to prove his claim. Imali reveals that the Fhrey cannot be ruled by someone who isn't free, but Mawandul accuses her of manipulating him for her own power. As tensions rise, he forces the priest Volhoric to reveal the horn and attempts to blow it, believing his remaining Fhrey blood might allow him to claim leadership despite his fall from grace. Part 16. Uli Vermar. In Chapter 1, Persephone navigates the icy paths of Dragoncamp, handling daily grievances and the growing concerns over Lothian's dragons and worsening weather. She meets Nifron in her tent, where he reveals Elison's gruesome death at the hands of giants. Nifron struggles with grief and guilt, confiding that Elison was like a mentor to him. As they talk, a horn sounds, signaling the end of the Uli Vermar and Lothian's death. The group speculates on who killed Lothian and who might be challenging for the throne. Persephone wonders if a Miralith is behind the assassination, considering the possibility of peace. In Chapter 2, Persephone meets Malcolm on Dragon Hill, where he reveals Lothian's murder by his son, Mawandul. They discuss the growing threat of the Fhrey, with Persephone seeking answers about the future. Malcolm warns that timing is crucial, and that if they leave, they'll lose the war. He speaks cryptically about a pivotal moment and the importance of being present when Brin returns. Persephone is troubled by Malcolm's vague assurances and his cryptic references to destiny. He mentions a crucial task for Habet and departs, leaving Persephone anxious about the future and Brin's role in saving everyone. Part 17. We call him Malcolm. In Chapter 1, Mawandul confronts Imali and the rune over the horn, revealing that his father's plans were betrayed. The rune demands the horn, but Mawandul challenges her, using his power to lift a stone bench to crush her. However, the rune uses her own power to disintegrate the stone and takes the horn. Mawandul accuses Imali of conspiring with the rune, but she defends her intentions to end the war. The rune, now holding the horn, prepares to leave, but Mawandul blocks her exit, preparing to confront her. The tension escalates as they prepare for a showdown. In Chapter 2, Suri faces Mawandul's fire attack, easily countering it with wind and ice. When Mawandul survives, Volhoric reveals that the horn protects him. Suri tries to blow it but fails, as only a Fhrey can sound it. Imali suggests Suri challenge Mawandul on her behalf, promising peace if victorious, but Suri is skeptical of Imali's intentions. Mawandul, frustrated, continues to attack but is thwarted by Suri. Volhoric pressures Suri, emphasizing the dire consequences if Mawandul remains in power. After reflecting on her choices, Suri realizes the future depends on her decision, but she's torn. In Chapter 3, Suri grapples with her options, torn between supporting Imali or Mawandul. As she contemplates her decision, strange scratches appear on the marble floor, forming images of a horn, a spear, and a door. Minna, the wolf, responds to the mysterious markings, leading Suri to question their meaning. When Minna howls, Suri notices a mural on the ceiling depicting Karaticus, a key figure from Fhrey history. Suri realizes the importance of the moment and wonders if the strange signs are leading her toward a solution. Minna's actions hint that something greater is at play. In Chapter 4, Suri feels her horn tugged by an unseen force which Minna seems to be guiding. Trusting her sister's mysterious return, Suri opens the door and follows Minna into the plaza, where they encounter a crowd of Fhrey reacting to the open door. As they move toward the garden, Suri notices shimmering lights and wolf tracks, leading her to realize Minna's role in the strange occurrences. Entering the garden, Suri discovers the source of the shimmering light, a ghostly woman's figure, signaling that something extraordinary is unfolding. Suri and Minna press on, undeterred. In Chapter 5, Suri meets Brin's ghost, who explains that she was sent to retrieve the horn for Nifron to make a challenge. As Brin takes the horn, a man named Trelos appears, claiming that Turin, whom he blames for his sister's death, must be punished. Tensions rise as Trelos demands the key, but Minna, protective of Suri, growls at him. Brin retreats into a murky pool, and Trelos warns Minna not to intervene again. Suri and Minna leave the garden, encountering a confused Nairi who questions Suri's identity. Suri asserts her new role and heads home with Minna. In Chapter 6, Brin navigates the transition between worlds, using her new abilities to move swiftly through Allison. She encounters Wraith and Arya, sharing that she has the horn and needs to return it to Nifron. Arya asks about her son Gifford's happiness, and Brin offers a gentle answer. Brin reveals the key's importance and proposes leaving it in Rel for others to use, but Wraith warns of its danger. After discussions on the risks, Brin decides to leave the key in a safe place, promising to return. She bids farewell to Wraith and Arya, determined to fulfill her mission. Part 18. Dropping Rocks. In Chapter 1, Gifford, trapped in the abyss with Tressa and Tesh, struggles with feelings of helplessness. He realizes Roan is missing and searches for her, fearing Ivor's involvement. When he finds Roan with Ivor, he is shocked by her confession. She came willingly to seek answers about Brin. Roan admits she's been consumed by guilt and pain, which Ivor had manipulated. Gifford confronts Ivor, but Roan stops him, revealing her decision to forgive Ivor and let go of her hatred. Her light grows as she embraces the Carver, finding freedom and forgiveness. In Chapter 2, Roan and Gifford's brilliance grows as they leave Ivor's cave, lighting up the surroundings. They witness a falling star, which they believe is Brin returning home. Roan reveals that letting go of hate and regret is the key to escaping their current state. While Gifford embraces this idea, Tesh and Tressa struggle to forgive those who wronged them. Tressa shares her guilt about manipulating her husband to commit murders, explaining her self-loathing. As Ivor warns of approaching Typhons, Roan insists they must escape. Roan receives a wooden carving from Ivor, symbolizing his regret for her mother's death. Part 19. Horizontal Star. In Chapter 1, Moya reflects on her time at Midian's fortress, where she has picked up a variety of dwarven insults. Accompanied by Beatrice, Moya stands on the battlements, contemplating the abyss and her guilt after a betrayal. Beatrice prods Moya, suggesting she may eventually find peace if she succeeds in her quest. She warns Moya about self-loathing and how her actions could harm those around her, foreshadowing a future meeting with someone like her. Beatrice discusses the coming upheavals and the shifting nature of good and evil, hinting at a greater purpose for Moya in the world's transformation. In Chapter 2, Moya feels a lighter burden after Beatrice reveals that Brin will survive, though Moya still struggles with guilt. When she asks about Suri, Beatrice remains silent, prompting Moya to insult her. Beatrice then reveals that Moya isn't finished yet. She must return. Moya is told Brin holds the key, and Beatrice hints at a larger plan involving Techin's recovery. Beatrice urges Moya to trust her and explains that the Queen will soon realize the importance of the light Moya saw. This revelation sets Moya on a race against time, with much trouble still ahead. Part 20. Unlocking the Key. In Chapter 1, Brin, recovering from near death, learns from Muriel about the ram's horn she brought from fire, which holds a challenge to crown a king. Realizing she must deliver the horn to Nifron, Brin reveals her encounter with Trelos, who escaped fire but sacrificed his memories. Muriel is devastated, and Brin explains how Trelos recorded his memories in stone, hoping to reclaim them. As a storm rages outside, Brin shares a message from Muriel's father, revealing that Trelos is no longer trapped in fire. Muriel, though reluctant, agrees to help Brin reach Nifron in time, and Brin promises to return to Trelos. Part 21. The sun goes down. In Chapter 1, Persephone is startled by the chaos outside her tent, fearing the worst after Malcolm's warning about impending disaster. As she learns from Nifron that the enemy's army, including dragons, is approaching, she insists on staying, believing they can win. Tensions rise between Persephone and Nifron, who wants to retreat for safety, but Persephone demands they stay and face the threat. A dragon arrives, pinning Nifron down, but Persephone convinces it to spare him. She declares her authority as Koenig, urging her people to trust her, promising they can win if they stay and fight. In Chapter 2, Brin races against the setting sun, struggling through a frozen landscape after leaving the swamp. The journey, which had started smoothly, becomes increasingly difficult as hunger, thirst, and exhaustion take their toll. She realizes the food from the Tetlin witch was enchanted, and though she once felt strong, her body now grows weak. With the sun setting and her energy fading, Brin battles the snow and cold. Just when hope seems lost, Naraspor appears, carrying water and food, offering her a lifeline. Brin is grateful, thanking Elan for the unexpected help. In Chapter 3, Nifron enters Persephone's tent, reflecting on his limited options. He considers abandoning her and her people or trying to force the army to retreat, though both paths are fraught with danger. After failing to find Malcolm, Nifron heads towards the dragon guarding Persephone. Expecting it to remain still, he is shocked when the dragon awakens and speaks to him. It challenges Nifron, mocking his size and intentions. The dragon reveals that the battle is only the beginning, hinting at a larger conflict ahead. Nifron prepares for a confrontation, confident in his mission. In Chapter 4, Persephone, accompanied by Justine and Nolan, finds Malcolm near the edge of camp. As they talk, a dragon takes flight from Dragon Hill, and Nifron confronts it with a sword. The camp watches in awe as the two combatants face off. Persephone rushes toward the hill, but is stopped by Malcolm, who reveals that the dragon is a magical illusion, not Wraith. As the battle continues, Nifron withstands a blast of fire unscathed. Persephone watches as Nifron strikes the dragon down, causing an explosive eruption that knocks everyone to the ground. In Chapter 5, Nifron informs Persephone that they are leaving now that the dragon is gone. Malcolm arrives with a ram's horn and reveals a weary Brin, whom Persephone recognizes. Brin, exhausted and barely alive, pleads with Nifron to blow the horn, which will end the war and grant him control over both sides of the Nidvalden. Despite his desire for revenge, Nifron is offered the choice between ruling or accepting defeat. After a tense moment, Nifron blows the horn, signaling a critical turning point in the war. Brin's sacrifice weighs heavily on Persephone. Part 22. The Hornblower. In Chapter 1, Mawandul sits on the forest throne for the first time, reflecting on his strained relationship with his father Lothian. After Mawandul kills his father, he is left to rule, but his anxiety grows upon hearing the sound of the challenge horn. He fears a powerful challenger might emerge, possibly another Miralith or even a god. Mawandul interrogates the Aquila leaders about the horn's origin, but they have no answers. Unsure of the rules and facing the unknown, he grows increasingly desperate, ordering the Aquila to be locked away. Fear and uncertainty consume him as he awaits his challenger. Part 23. Losing weight. In Chapter 1, Tesh, Gifford, Roan, and Tressa navigate a snow-covered canyon. As they near a pillar, a red glow approaches, signaling danger. Gifford urges Roan to dim her light to avoid attracting attention, but Roan explains that they need to stay as light as possible to climb. Tesh, feeling burdened by his weight, initially resists, but Gifford pressures him to swear to try, not for himself, but for Brin's memory. As a massive typhon approaches, Tesh reluctantly swears to climb, and Gifford insists on seeing him at the top, leaving them to face the impending threat. In Chapter 2, Gifford and Roan continue their climb, with Roan effortlessly scaling the stone while Gifford struggles. Roan encourages Gifford to release his burdens, fear, guilt, and regret, to lighten his load. As they discuss the typhons below, Gifford admits feeling like a cripple, rejected by others because of his condition. Roan reveals that his true weight is emotional, not physical, and that his self-perception has been the burden. She helps him realize that he's never been a cripple, allowing him to release his pain. The chapter ends with Gifford shedding his emotional weight, feeling lighter and free. In Chapter 3, Tesh and Tressa remain at the base of the pillar, struggling against a snowstorm as they wait for Roan and Gifford to ascend. Tressa, weakened and resigned, mocks Tesh's hesitation to climb, expressing envy for Brin and regret for her own lost chances. Tesh confesses his guilt over killing 5 people, acknowledging his actions as revenge, not justice. Tressa, who has given up, offers her last bit of light to Tesh. As the typhons approach, they suddenly stop, leaving Tesh and Tressa alone in the dark, their hope fading as they are consumed by their bitterness. Part 24. News from the Tower. In Chapter 1, Mawandul prepares to move out of the room he's lived in for 30 years, reflecting on his past. Treya, his only friend, is helping him pack, while Mawandul is reluctant to embrace his future as Fane. He fears being challenged by a Miralith like Vidar or Jared, and feels his actions have doomed him. Treya reveals she once had a vow to Mawandul's father, which kept her from revealing a secret. Just then, a voice from the past, Jared, mocks him, revealing that Nifron of the Instaria is the one who blew the horn, setting Mawandul's fate in motion. In Chapter 2, Imali and her companions, imprisoned in a food cellar, argue about their failed attempt to stop Mawandul's rise to power. Mawandul enters, revealing that he has been challenged by Nifron and plans to fight him at Avampartha. He discusses the lack of restrictions on the challenge's location and the preparations for the duel. Mawandul intends to defeat Nifron, secure his claim to the throne, and have Imali crown him. He promises to spare the lives of his prisoners if they ensure the ritual is properly followed, marking the end of the Aquila and their eventual release. In Chapter 3, Mawandul contemplates his plan to kill every member of the Aquila once he's crowned Fane. He visits the garden, curious about Trylos and the door, but leaves when it remains closed. Back in his chambers, Treya, his nursemaid, reveals a long-hidden secret. She is his mother. Despite her emotional explanation, Mawandul rejects the claim, angered by what he sees as another lie. He refuses to believe her and orders her to stay behind as he heads to Avampartha, cutting ties with her and marking the end of his old life. Part 25. Mission from God. In Chapter 1, Brin wakes up weak and disoriented after delivering the horn, with no memory of how she ended up in her tent. Persephone visits her, relieved that Brin survived and comforting her. They talk about the losses they've experienced, including Wraith's understanding and continued love for Persephone. Persephone encourages Brin to keep moving forward despite the grief, reminding her of the importance of living for others. Brin considers whether revealing Nifron's treachery will only harm Persephone, ultimately deciding to remain silent for now. Persephone expresses her gratitude for Brin's sacrifices, and Brin quietly resolves to hold the truth. In Chapter 2, Brin lies in her tent, reflecting on the hardships of travel and the price paid for their comforts. Malcolm enters, revealing the truth behind his actions and the complexity of his character. He admits to past deceptions, but urges Brin to finish documenting her experiences in fire, emphasizing its importance for uniting the world through a shared language. Brin, still struggling with her own flaws, questions Malcolm's motives. He explains that his actions were necessary for a greater good, though his brother's return poses a threat to their efforts. Brin vows to help, despite the risks. Part 26. The Man in the Mirror. In Chapter 1, Gifford and Roan stand at the edge of a broken bridge, stranded with no apparent way forward. Frustrated, Roan realizes Gifford might possess the ability to pass through a nearby mirrored door without a key because of his heroic nature. Despite his reluctance to leave her behind, Roan insists he can go through the door to seek help and promises to wait. Gifford, touched by Roan's faith in him, reassures her of his commitment to return. Crossing into the mirror, Gifford steps into an enchanting world, determined to find a way back to Roan. In Chapter 2, Roan watches Gifford disappear through the mirror, left alone to reflect on her past and the people who helped her transform, including Padera, Moya, and Brin. She recalls how Brin's admiration helped her find self-worth, breaking down the emotional barriers she'd built after Ivor's death. Now, though she fears Gifford might never return, she resolves to wait indefinitely, cherishing the love he has given her. Suddenly she hears a voice calling her name from an unknown source, stirring hope and curiosity amidst her solitude. In Chapter 3, Moya, Techin, and Rain spot Roan across a broken bridge, her figure glowing brightly. While they struggle to find a way to reach her, Moya recalls Beatrice's confusing instructions to head to the bridge instead of pursuing Brin directly. They're unsure how to cross and debate options, but Rain, a dwarf, explains he can't help since he's only skilled in digging, not bridge building. As they strategize, a distant drumbeat and horn sound from the White Tower of Ferrell, signaling an approaching threat and adding urgency to their efforts to reunite with Roan. In Chapter 4, Gifford meets his parents in Allison, where he's astonished to finally see his mother. Overwhelmed, they embrace, and Gifford shares news of his marriage to Roan, expressing his need to return to her. His parents affirm his inner strength, noting he doesn't need their help to overcome obstacles like the broken bridge, as he's far more capable than he realizes. They reveal that Brin left a key for him in Rel, but only briefly. Gifford's parents encourage him to return to Elan and suggest he can bring Roan to Allison by simply holding her hand when they enter. In Chapter 5, Gifford returns to Roan, promising they can be together in Allison someday. Moya, Techin, and Rain see Gifford across the abyss, but they're urgently aware that the Queen is approaching, and they need to reach Rel. Suddenly, the broken bridge begins to move and transform ominously. Techin prepares to face Ferrell's forces alone, but Moya suggests Gifford and Roan might be safer returning to Allison. Just then, the stone of the bridge and pillar erupts, forcing Rain to drag Moya to safety as a violent earthquake shakes the ground, sending rock fragments flying. Part 27. What do butterflies do? In Chapter 1, Suri reflects on her journey, memories of captivity, and her bond with Minna, the wolf she once sacrificed but who has mysteriously returned. As Suri approaches Avampartha, she encounters a Fhrey who reveals that the war may be over, but Suri faces an old foe, Jared. Using her powers, she blocks Jared's art by stopping the river's flow, symbolically placing him in a collar, as he had done to her. Suri realizes the power of human passion in art, likening herself to a butterfly, and with Minna, heads home with renewed purpose and confidence. Part 28. The Chariot Race. In Chapter 1, Moya, Roan, Gifford, and Techin race to escape the Queen of Nifrel, who is pursuing them after they leave the abyss. Roan confirms Brin has already left, carrying a horn that allows Nifron to challenge the Fhrey leadership. Moya, concerned about their path forward, learns that Brin left behind a key needed to progress, complicating their escape. As they ascend a ridge and see the White Tower's light expanding across Nifrel in pursuit, the group faces the chilling realization that they're not safe even in Rel. Amid mounting dread, Moya urgently commands everyone to keep running. In Chapter 2, Moya and her group return to Rel, only to find themselves pursued by the Queen Ferrell, who seeks the mysterious key. As they flee, Moya realizes that the Queen is manipulating the road, pulling it back to hinder their escape. In the ensuing chase, Rain is trampled, but revived by Drome, who confronts Ferrell. Tensions rise until Moya's mother, Audrey, emerges from the crowd, claiming Moya as her daughter. Audrey's public acknowledgement of pride in Moya distracts the Queen, ultimately leading Ferrell to retreat. Moya and her mother share a bittersweet reunion, revealing buried emotions. In Chapter 3, Padera opens the gate and reassures Gifford, Moya, and the group as they prepare to leave, mentioning her plan to remain behind with her loved ones in the afterlife. They encounter a weeping Fhrey by the river, who reveals she cannot enter Rel due to breaking Ferrell's law. The group sympathizes, but must continue their journey. As they prepare to ascend back to Elan, Moya reflects on the mixed feelings of returning to life. Holding onto small tufts symbolizing feathers, the companions link hands, ready for their return, while the Fhrey watches, surprised by their determination. Part 29. Reunions and Farewells. In Chapter 1, Persephone arrives at Avampartha with a delegation, feeling the weight of the impending moment. As they prepare to camp, she encounters Suri, who has unexpectedly returned with her wolf, Minna. Persephone marvels at Suri's newfound wisdom and power, including her ability to divert the river. Suri expresses gratitude to Persephone for her teachings, and Persephone grows emotional, seeing Suri as a changed woman. Persephone's son, Nolan, bonds with Minna, while Suri shares her plans to return to Hawthorn Glen. The chapter closes with Suri's farewell, leaving Persephone in awe of her mystic friend. In Chapter 2, Brin continues writing, focused on completing a significant manuscript that will unite the races through a common language. She is astonished to find her ink and parchment are endlessly replenishing, and her writing is flawless. As she works, Suri and her wolf Minna appear outside the wagon. Brin is overjoyed to see them, especially Minna, whom she thanks for helping her return to life. Suri reveals the upcoming challenge and tells Brin she's heading home. Brin suggests Suri learn to read, and they share a heartfelt exchange before Suri and Minna leave, hinting at a future reunion. In Chapter 3, Persephone and Nifron arrive at the pre-challenge meeting for the challenge, where Fhrey dignitaries await. Tensions rise as they discuss the rules of the event and the stakes, particularly between Nifron and Mawandul, the arrogant prince who seeks the position of Fane. The Fhrey debate the location of the challenge, and Nifron agrees to meet halfway, despite tensions over the Frey's views on human governance. Persephone reflects on rumors circulating about Nifron's intentions and the uncertain future, unsure of what will happen if Nifron wins the challenge and what their rule would entail. In Chapter 4, Nifron prepares for the upcoming challenge, reflecting on his fears and doubts about facing Mawandul. Persephone expresses her confidence in him, but Nifron remains unsure. As he walks in the forest, he encounters Malcolm, who reveals that the challenge isn't to the death, but rather a contest of surrender. Malcolm urges Nifron to spare Mawandul's life to avoid provoking a revolt from the Miralith. If Nifron shows mercy, he could earn the respect and love of his people. Malcolm reminds Nifron of his destiny to become emperor, not just Fane, if he keeps his promises. Part 30. The Challenge. In Chapter 1, Moya struggles to recover after being pulled from a deadly river, her body not responding like the others. Tektion's efforts to revive her are crucial, and she finally coughs up water, coming back to life. They are taken in by Muriel, who feeds and provides guidance, telling them that Brin has already succeeded in retrieving the horn and that the challenge will be held at Avampartha. They travel north, feeling weak and disoriented. Tektion leads them through the snow, and they soon realize they must hurry, as two important battles are about to take place, with the distant sound of trumpets signaling their urgency. In Chapter 2, Nifron and Persephone prepare for the final challenge at Avampartha. Nifron declines Persephone's offer of comfort, preferring solitude before the fight. Persephone reflects on the possible outcome of the war, imagining a future without Fhrey oppression. She envisions rebuilding the world, with Nifron focusing on military defense while she works toward establishing human cities. As Nifron steps into the light in his armor, Persephone feels pride in their efforts to change the course of history. The drums signal the start of the battle, and Mawandul appears, followed by Fhrey officials, setting the stage for the final confrontation. In Chapter 3, Brin watches the ceremony from a balcony overlooking the arena, where Nifron and Mawandul are involved in a ritual. She reflects on her writing and the importance of recording the events, hoping to preserve history. Trylos joins her, expressing his disdain for her book and accusing her of spreading propaganda that paints Turin as a hero while hiding his true villainous nature. Trylos warns that her work could manipulate future generations to support Turin's agenda. He demands Eaton's key in exchange for his silence, suggesting a dangerous trade that could impact the future. In Chapter 4, Persephone observes as two Fhrey, Nifron and Mawandul, prepare for a ceremonial battle. Nifron showcases his skill with a double-bladed pole, while Mawandul plans his counterattacks, confident in his magic. He unleashes a powerful fire blast at Nifron, but the armor proves resistant. Nifron retaliates with rapid strikes, making Mawandul panic and humiliate himself in front of the crowd. As the battle escalates, Mawandul taps into his magic, causing Nifron to sink into mud and summon an army of ants to attack. Nifron struggles against the swarm, losing his armor, which Mawandul absorbs into the earth. Part 31. Fate of the Future. In Chapter 1, Brin confesses to Treelos that she no longer has Eaton's key, though she feels a sense of fear and vulnerability. Treelos, convinced of her honesty, questions her about the key's whereabouts and suggests she hid it. Brin struggles with her fear as Treelos inspects her belongings, threatening to destroy her work if she doesn't reveal the key's location. Meanwhile, 5 previously dead adventurers, revived, make their way through an abandoned camp, unaware of the impending danger. Tection observes the gathering Fhrey army, hinting at the beginning of a larger conflict. In Chapter 2, Brin desperately tries to convince Treelos not to destroy her book, revealing that it contains his lost memories, including his love for someone named Muriel. Treelos, initially skeptical, finally understands that these memories are key to his strength. However, he refuses to reclaim them, believing the sacrifice was necessary. Brin tries to plead with him, but Treelos remains focused on obtaining Eaton's key. He threatens her friends, forcing Brin to choose between them and the key. In a final act of defiance, Brin pushes herself off the edge of the falls, preparing to face whatever comes next. In Chapter 3, Brin falls off the bridge into the mist, and Moya, Tection, and Rain rush to the tower to find her. Moya collapses from exhaustion, but Tection discovers a shawl, not Brin's pack, hinting at her fate. Meanwhile, Mawandul, after blasting Nifron with fire, is horrified to find Nifron still alive, covered in tattoos and unscathed. Nifron beats Mawandul mercilessly, but refrains from killing him, deciding to show mercy for strategic reasons. He demands Mawandul's surrender to claim the forest throne, which the prince reluctantly does. Nifron is declared the new Fane, but he also claims the title of Emperor. Part 32. The Book of Brin. In Chapter 1, Mawandul lies injured and broken after a brutal fight with Nifron, unable to see, speak, or move. As he contemplates death, a mysterious figure approaches, revealing himself as Rex Uberlin. The figure taunts Mawandul, explaining that Nifron's victory wasn't complete. He holds the key to Nifron's future plans and suggests that they can use Mawandul's overlooked position to their advantage. Rex speaks of starting a war and overthrowing Nifron's ambitions, hinting at a larger conflict. Despite his pain, Mawandul is left with a glimmer of purpose, as Rex plans to use him in the coming struggle. In Chapter 2, after Nifron's coronation, Persephone feels disconnected and overwhelmed by her new title of Empress. As she walks alone through Empyre, she unexpectedly encounters 5 familiar figures. The next day, during Nifron's coronation ceremony, the war is officially over. Nifron, still wary of rebellion, orders the destruction of the Gilarabrins and the creation of a memorial. Tensions rise as fights break out, and Nifron decrees the separation of Fhrey and humans with strict borders along the Nidwalden. He also announces his decision to not rule directly over the Free, further straining relations with them. In Chapter 3, Gifford, Roan, and Rain travel west in a wagon, their journey clouded by the loss of Brin. Gifford wonders who killed her, but Roan believes she jumped, not pushed. They discuss the possibility of Brin's return, but Roan believes she went back for a reason, possibly to help Tesh and Twessa. Rain reflects on the future and mentions that he and his companions might help build a new city, despite their banishment. Roan then finds a quill and a book belonging to Brin, sparking a new mystery. The chapter ends with Roan beginning to read the book. Part 33. The First Empyre. In Chapter 1, on her 62nd birthday, Persephone, weakened by illness, reflects on the city being dedicated that day. Despite worsening symptoms, she recalls memories of the past and her husband's ambitious plans for the city's future. As she speaks with Malcolm, an old friend, he reveals troubling news. The future holds darkness, but also hope, in the form of a child born to change the world. Malcolm assures her that he will protect this child and fulfill a promise. At the city's dedication, Nifron's vision will come to fruition, but the city will be named Perseplicis, in honor of Persephone herself. In Chapter 2, Muriel confronts her father Turin after years of separation. He arrives unannounced, offering her a key and claiming it as a birthday gift, though Muriel distrusts him. They exchange tense words, with Muriel expressing her hatred and refusal to forgive him for past wrongs. Turin confesses his failures, including ruining several lives, including Brin's, Persephone's, and his own. He urges Muriel to hold the key until she is ready to forgive him, but she remains defiant. Turin leaves, taking a satchel and a feather as a symbol of small hope, leaving their strained relationship unresolved.